just had enough and I said I'm leaving, and that was it. Like, I need never me. No, you don't. Humanity-led leadership. Let's not think of people as numbers or on a payroll slip or just an extra pair of hands that can do what you want to do the things that you don't like to do, and they can do it for you. No.
Today's guest will be showing us how to build fruitful teams. Many of us get to the point in whatever God has called us to do where the key to our fruitfulness and our productivity is actually delegating and working with others. She has a professional background in HR. Her experience spans over 20 years, so she knows what she's talking about. She very specifically works with leaders and visionaries. She's a speaker, a business consultant, a mentor, and a coach. Today, I introduce to you Soniamarie Palmer. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Let's first kind of dive into a little bit about your background. So for people who might not know you, who is Soniamarie? Tell us how you got to where you are today.
It's been a journey. I'm an ex-corporate girl. So I started out working in HR in 2000. I used to do that back in the day in retail in Marks and Spencer's.
Okay.
But before that, I used to work in Sainsbury's in the back offices. So God's always had me in the kind of behind the scenes, in the offices, in the trenches, seeing how things operate in all of my roles. And I've done that for quite a long time in terms of being in corporate, going to different places. I was always the kind of girl that had the ambition to go for a job that I probably couldn't do more than like 50% of. So I'll just go for something and then work it out after.
Yeah.
So I kind of managed to jump up the HR career ladder. There's kind of like a HR hierarchy when it comes to that particular profession. Got qualified in university and in the CIPD, which is the awarding body for HR. Got a master's level, so level 7 in employment law. Was trained by Eversheds and absolutely loved it. And I guess after a while, I realised there was more for me. And so when it came to doing my own stuff, my own business stuff, I decided to offer my HR expertise to smaller businesses. Love business. Probably was a bit like the female version of Del Boy. Is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know. Not the illegal parts, but just, dabbling in and out of business stuff. And I thought, let me help SMEs and smaller businesses that can't afford HR. Let me help them. I'd done that alongside my corporate career for 4 years. And then one day, I just had enough and I said, I'm leaving. And that was it. Like, it was one not so good meeting, too many. And not that I'm telling anyone to do what I done, but I literally I walked out basically.
Yeah.
And decided to do it full time.
Yeah.
And I guess the rest is history. In that time since leaving, that's the end of this year will be 12 years. I've been working for myself full time.
Wow.
And in that time, it's been a mixture of, I've done 4 businesses, all service-based. 3 of them have been around HR, consultancy, kind of mentoring and coaching, which is my bag. And one of them, I was a wedding and event planner. And I ran that business, won an award in that business, and closed it down after a while. But this is where I am now. It's kind of, as every year has gone on, every business that I've done, it's been about evolving, changing, going with whatever God has told me to do. In that time, helping who I can help, and just pouring out my expertise into people that need that help. Leaders, entrepreneurs. I'm passionate about business. I'm super passionate about development and people growing and developing themselves. And I know that God has gifted me to support that journey for other people. Yeah. So everything I've gone through, the experience, the years of studying and all the ups and downs and the dramas that I have experienced, even through corporate career to doing business, it's not all for me. It's really to point to other people, and it's led me to where I am today, and I love it.
Yeah. And how did you become a Christian, and how do you then blend that with kind of what you do? Because I know one of the key things that you say is like, you don't have to compromise for what it is that you want to get to.
Yeah.
So how did you become a Christian? How do you blend that with what you do now?
Well, I grew up in church. I grew up in Church of England, went to church schools, Church of England with my grandmother when I was younger, grew up in church, stepped away for a little while, came back like in my late teens. But a pivotal point for me was when I used to live in America. I worked and lived in America. And I remember going to church with one of my friends, my work colleagues, and she brought me to a prayer meeting. And this lady said to me, oh, you're not a Christian. And I was so offended. I was like, what do you mean by that? You're not a Christian. I am a Christian. And she broke some things down to me. And even though I'd grown up in church and I considered myself to be a Christian, there were steps that I needed to take for myself. It was more than just being, sprinkled with water as a kid that happened when you was baptized. It's actually making that step, that bold step for yourself. And so I decided to take it, really. I took it a few years after when I came back from America. I took that step, got baptized, and followed Christ ever since. I must admit, when I got baptized initially, I was kind of left to my own devices. It was a great experience, but the follow-up wasn't there. It was non-existent. Right. So I had to figure things out. So I was saved and sinning, to be honest with you, and had to kind of work out my salvation, as the word says to do. Yeah. And for me, one of the things that's come with that in this journey with God and just growing and learning and being on some great leadership and spiritual mentorship that I'm under now in my church and the people that are around me, it has really, I've utilized that to, I guess, bring out the side of me that I know God already created within me, and that's one that I don't believe in compromise. I'm a very confident person naturally. I know that's not necessarily something everyone has. I'm quite a confident person naturally. I'm not really afraid to confront. I'm very big on you being yourself and not being a people pleaser. That's just not my bag. And as I've grown in my spiritual journey, it's kind of like I've got that kind of like Holy Spirit courage and confidence to actually be who God has created me to be and not to worry about anything else, and to go and do the things God wants me to do. And so I kind of merge all that together in not only what I do, but how I help my clients, my mentees, my coaches, and saying, look, don't compromise. You don't have to compromise. You can be yourself. You haven't got to try and be anything that anyone else says you have to be. Society really trains us and conditions us. It's a whole plan. I mean, I don't want to go too far into it because I can go into a whole thing. I'm a bit of a rebel about that. But we're kind of conditioned and trained in how we should be and how we should live life. And this is how you should think. And this is how life goes. Go to, college, university, you get a 9 to 5, you work for 65 years or whatever it may be, and then you retire. It's a very conditioned way of doing things. But I've always known that I fit outside the box. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, that's nothing you're trained to do. It's not part of the status quo. You're not trained to do that. It's kind of, it's something you almost discover. And when you come outside of the box, you realize, oh my gosh, there's a whole world out here. And so it's like, well, if you've taken the bold step to step outside the box, you're already shown you're courageous. Yeah. So then why are we going to kind of cower back in terms of, our personalities? Why are we going to compromise? We don't need to compromise. We've already stepped out of that box of compromise in terms of fitting into a mold that society has told us we should fit into. So for me, it's like, if you've taken that step to be an entrepreneur, let's go. Be who you are, discover who you are, go on that journey with Christ, and pour it into everything that God has told you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we start talking about building teams, what, first of all, does fruitfulness mean to you? When you hear fruitfulness, what kind of signs would you look for in your life to be able to say, I am a fruitful woman?
I think it is what you do with what's been given to you. I use this kind of like analogy with all my clients, the thing I'm always talking about. And it's based off of the scripture where Paul says that he plants a seed, Apollos waters it, and God gives the increase. And I consider all that we are doing when it comes to your God-given assignment, I consider it to that of a tree. So a seed is planted. First and foremost, is the soil needs to be tilled over. That's the kind of foundations where the seed's been planted. And that, it can be in terms of our personality, our backgrounds, our environment. But a seed is planted, and then it's for us to position ourselves to be watered, to allow that seed to be watered. And that's where you might have a coach or a mentor or someone that's pouring into you that can help you to develop in the area that you need to be developed in. And the point of that is that, a seed is planted, we're being watered, we're being nourished by some good soil, planted in a great place, that must grow into a tree. Yeah. And when a tree grows, I assume all trees are fruit trees, that's how I look at it. Yeah. When a tree grows, it bears fruit. And a tree does not eat its own fruit.
Absolutely.
An apple tree doesn't grow apples to eat it for itself. Neither does an orange tree, mango tree, and all the trees that have whatever else on them, bananas and whatever else. A tree doesn't grow fruit for itself. that fruit is for other people. So for me, you are being fruitful if you are doing what you need to do to ensure you're planted in the right kind of space, in the right environment, if you are positioning yourself to be nurtured and to be fed, allowing yourself to grow and develop. There's nature and there's nurture element to that, and that you are bearing fruit. That is, you are actually serving people in some capacity, that those around you are benefiting from what has come from the work that you're doing. They're benefiting from the place God has placed you.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's seeing what you're doing. You're not keeping it to yourself. You're actively in ministry. You're serving in your church. You are utilizing all the gifts, the skills, acquired skill, the talents, abilities, spiritual gifts God's given to you, and you're using that to serve in some capacity through business, through ministry. It's you doing something. And so for me, that's how I kind of judge fruitfulness. Of course, we've got the other side of it. The Bible talks about, you shall know them by their fruit. So there's a whole element of that, and seeing the fruit of the Spirit, not fruits, fruit. People get that wrong, of the Spirit. But in terms of more tangible fruit, metaphorically, it's seeing what you're doing. Are you utilizing your skill? If people, around you are seeing that you're a great orator, are you utilizing that? If you are fantastic at coaching people or supporting people, are you utilizing that? If you are naturally a giver, are you doing things that, are, I can't say the word, philanthropic, you know what I mean? Giving, doing those kind of things. So it's kind of like, it's when you're around somebody and you're seeing them, you're seeing, recognizing and seeing what's within them, but seeing them utilize it, that for me is fruitfulness.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, because just yesterday I was literally teaching on that in our accountability group, that literally a sign of fruitfulness is being of benefit to other people, adding value like wherever you go. So when it comes to building teams, at what point in someone's kind of career or ministry or whatever it is that God has called them to do, would you advise them or recommend that they should start thinking about building a team?
Do you know, I wouldn't necessarily say there's a particular time. I think you know it in yourself. It's when you can't do it all yourself.
Yeah.
It gets to that point when you start doing anything, you wear many hats at the beginning and doing it by yourself usually. And when you're getting to the point when you're a bottleneck, when there's stuff for you to do and you are struggling for time. Okay, let's put it this way. You could be a good time manager, doing the best you can do with what you've got in your hand, but you're still struggling. Yeah. Things are bottlenecking at you. You can't be in various places at the same time because you're one person. When you get to that point, you need to start thinking about getting the support and getting the help. There isn't any particular, that's my recommendation. When you get to a point when you know you need to get help and you're becoming the bottleneck and almost the ceiling and the cap to your progression, or the progression of that which you're doing, business, ministry, whatever it may be, you need to start thinking about getting some help. Yeah. If there's, because it's only so far you can take something. If it's something that is, where it's a business, you're making money, it's only so far you can make, how much money you can make before you've got to get help to get it to the next level. You've got to shift yourself from being in the strategic position to being in the operational position. Yeah. And that can be a hard thing for many to do for a number of reasons. A lot of my clients, say, oh, no one can do it better than me. Well, actually, that's not right. Someone probably can. You just need to allow them to do it. You can be the jack of all trades, but not a master of none. But there's somebody that is a master of something. Yeah. And so if you relinquish that control and let them master in their lane, that gives you free time to then be more strategic. You can then cast the vision, make it plain so that they, as in your team members, can be the heralds that run with that vision for you. Yeah. So you can help to get things going at a quicker pace. You can reach more people, you can do more things. It's not all just on you. And you wasn't designed just for it to be on you either. Yeah. So it's I would say it's when you get to that point when you know it's time to, and I'm saying when a lot of my clients, if I'm being honest, sorry guys, you don't always know. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I think it's time for you to start thinking about getting a team of people or getting somebody. And a team can be two people, as in you and one other. It's not about racing out to get, all these big group of people. It's just somebody that can relinquish some of the responsibility, the one task that's taking up a lot of your time, the one task maybe that is not your area of expertise, that is actually a drain to you or a bore to you. Yeah. When you're not necessarily great at something or it bores you, you don't do it very well. Yeah. For everything that we find boring, there's somebody that finds it super exciting. I mean, there's some things that I can't stand. I don't know why anyone would find it exciting, but they do. Yeah. So it's at that point really.
Yeah. And so when it comes to teams, when you look at a team, what elements would you need to see to say that, okay, this team is bearing good fruit? How do you structure a team in a way that can support that person?
Well, it starts with the vision. What is where are we going? What is this? You can't bring people on board into something that they don't understand. You've got to understand, one, what it is that you're doing, what the vision is, what the mission is, not only for this current season, but going forward, so that you can then have that vision and literally, as the Bible says, cast that vision. When you're bringing someone on board, they've got to come into something that is established in terms of, well, I know where we're going. We may not have all the systems in place or the full structure in place, but this is what we're trying to achieve. And this is how I see your position fitting into that, and why I think you specifically will support and can support that particular vision. Do you see what I mean? So it's very much about knowing where you're going, what the purpose is, and why you want to bring someone on board. It's like it could become such a tick box exercise, just saying we're going to bring a team on board. You've got to know why. So when I do my consultancy and I've got clients I work with that are at the beginning stages of wanting to build a team, and they're like, I need a team. I'm like, why? To do what? To do what exactly? You've got to do all that groundwork. What are they going to be doing? Why do you need them? How do you see them fitting in? What is your plan for actually communicating and keeping them engaged? Otherwise, you end up bringing people on board who are not engaged and just here for a check. Yeah. As opposed to buying into the vision. Particularly in ministry, it's not even about a check necessarily. You're coming to serve. So you have to make sure that you are casting that vision and making sure that they understand it, and that you are putting things in place, structures in place and systems in place to ensure everyone's on board and knows how they fit in. You want to get buy-in to what you're doing. There are plenty of people. Not everyone is called to entrepreneurship. Not everyone is meant to be doing business and starting ministries necessarily. But, people naturally, I believe that we are creatures of habit. We are creatures that really crave engagement and involvement. We've been designed for community, not designed to work in a silo. And that's why you see, big brands out there, and they've got loyal employees who are working their butts off for this particular brand, even though it ain't their own. They're not called to entrepreneurship, but they're called to come and serve, and to serve well in their capacity. There's a whole lane for them. There's a gifting that God has given to them, whether they realize it or not, Christian or non-Christian, and they want to pour it out and go hell for leather for that particular brand. And that, I believe, is our innate nature as humans. And so it's not just the Googles and the Marks and Spencers and the lastminute.coms that get those kind of employees. No, we can get them in our businesses too, small or large, ministry or non-ministry. We can also get those kinds of people into our business. But the key to it is making sure they understand how they fit in, treating them well, getting them bought into that vision. That's what these big companies do.
Yeah. So what would be some practical tips in kind of getting people to actually buy into the vision? Because obviously we can write down the vision, we can make it plain, we can tell people the vision. But is there anything that people should be doing that would kind of help people really buy into the vision?
It's constant communication. It's centered around communication. How do you communicate with your employees? How do you get them involved? How do you do your, doing your staff meetings? How do you operate in a way that can be collaborative? I mean, there are some situations where you are the one that's running the business or the ministry. You've got to kind of tell people what to do. Then there are some elements where you can collaborate, you can invite their input, you can delegate is a big thing, giving people responsibility and saying, this is what we're trying to do. Now, this is how, this is what we're trying to do. You tell me how your department or your role can help to support that. And giving people a level of autonomy, giving them some trust, not just micromanaging them, but giving them, explaining what the vision is, getting them to buy into it in terms of giving them responsibility for bringing ideas to the table, collaborating with you, keeping communication regular, and not making it so, not being too draconian in your leadership style. I will say a practical thing is, before you start bringing on a team member, understand your leadership style. Yeah. How do you work? What works best for you? Having open communication, that's two-way feedback, enabling your team to be able to give you feedback as well. There's such a thing as upwards management, and it's you've got to be open to receiving that, because it may be that you're managing a team for the first time. You've not got it all down packed. So it's going to be a learning curve for both of you, but allowing for that two-way communication. So for me, it's about structures in place that support that feedback, support the communication. It's about delegation. It's about allowing them the autonomy to utilize their skill and their brain. They're a whole human with a whole brain. You've brought them on board because they've got some sense. Allow them to exercise that sense and not try to manipulate or control, or try to, as I've had people say to me many times, I mean, more times than I care to admit, many people saying to me, oh, I need another me. No, you don't. Your business, your ministry already has you. We need someone that can complement to you. There's different giftings that complement each other. If we're thinking of it into the body as a body of Christ, there's different aspects to the body. The head don't need to know what the arm, don't have to do what the arm is doing, because the arm can do what it's doing by itself, and the same vice versa. So if you think of your business or your ministry as a body, you may be the brain, that's fine, but the brain still needs the arm to reach out and get things. It still needs the feet to be able to walk somewhere. So no, you don't want another you, because then we would have all these brains and no body.
Yeah.
Nothing, there's no other elements to the body to get things done. So it's just like a mindset shift that needs to happen sometimes, I find.
Tell us more about leadership styles. What are some of the leadership styles, and what would you say is the best one? Is there a best one?
I don't think there's a best one per se. I think you've got to figure out what your leadership style is. So there's like kind of traditional ones like autocratic leadership styles that are very like draconian, do as I say, not as I do, get it done, very hardcore. But then you have what I think is a great way of leading, and that is more servant leadership, where you consider your leadership as one which is the primary focus is to serve not only the staff, that your team members, but also to serve the clients and those that are coming into your ministry. I say it's not a best one, but I think that's a great way to do it. Jesus used that as an example. Yeah. His whole leadership style was servant leadership. This, it's shifting from how the world thinks of when you're a leader, you're up there in the corner doing your own thing. A leader is very different to a manager. Yeah. And so it's kind of like you being able to lead, but lead by example, you leading by serving, not being too relaxed. It's like a laissez-faire kind of like leadership where you're kind of very relaxed and, let everything just happen around you. And it's like, well, no, you've got to have some kind of structure, but they've got to be, I guess, a loose structure, a structure that enables people to still be able to move and maneuver in between the systems you've put in place. But they see you as somebody that you lead by example, you say what you mean what you say, you're not expecting to do anything above and beyond what you wouldn't do as well. Yeah. And I think there's loads of other ones, but I think servant leadership is one that I think is a great one to really lead by. Just you're providing, it's funny because you can think of your business and your ministry as something that, it's my baby, I created it. Well, it's not, it's the Lord's, but anyway, but let's say, he's used you to do something, and you can think you're bringing people on board to serve you and serve your vision and your purpose and what you're trying to achieve in this particular context. But what you don't actually realize is that you are, in effect, the moment you are providing an opportunity for somebody, you are serving them, because you're providing a space for them to utilize their skills. You are allowing them you're creating a role for them that enables them to align their gifting to that role. You're creating a space for them to exercise that gifting, for them to develop that gifting, for them to develop character. You're providing an opportunity. So it's a lot more than just you. In you creating that role that you think is all about your business and them coming to help you. No, you're actually helping them to grow, helping them to develop. You providing that role could be the answer to their prayer. So when you look at it like that, you realize that actually I am actually serving you as much as you're serving me. And when you have that kind of mindset, it really opens the door for collaborative working, a level of respect. And that in itself even helps what we mentioned before about the kind of buy-in, and saying, look, what matters to you? What's your skill set? How can I support you in this? How can you grow in this? And that's what keeps people, I guess, wanting to stay. It keeps people bought in, because that doesn't happen very often. Yeah. And particularly if you are a leader that is open to conversation and communication. I'll talk about it a lot. I spoke about it a lot already, but it's so important, because you're almost the minority. There are a lot of leaders that are fantastic, and I'm going to tell you, there are a lot that are not very good at all. And they mix up management with leadership, and they're not that open. And so when you have someone that actually sees their role and the position that they've created for somebody as an opportunity to serve them, you stick out like a sore thumb. I mean, you'll literally be like, oh my gosh, my manager is so amazing. You stand out, and that in itself will just want people to want to continue working alongside you and buying in more, because you're approaching it very differently. Yeah. And as Christians, we need to approach it differently. We should do it differently anyway, I think, as people, remembering that it's people, it's almost humanity-led leadership. Let's not think of people as numbers or on a payroll slip or just an extra pair of hands that can do what you want to do the things that you don't like to do, and they can do it for you. No, it's humanity-led leadership. You're remembering that every single person that's working alongside you is a human being. Yeah. They're a person. and they have the same feelings, they have emotions, they have wants, they have needs, they have desires. They've got a lot to bring to the table. They've got families at home. So the job you've given to them, for example, the money you're providing to them for this in exchange for them doing the work, it has a greater impact. So when you're making decisions about who needs to be cut, for example, and redundancies and whatever, you don't take it lightly, because you recognize that there's a ripple effect to this when you're thinking of it in that way, and like I say, approaching it from a humanity kind of led leadership style. It really helps. And it's not necessarily easy, because the fact is people are people, and people be peopling. It's not easy at all.
Absolutely, I agree.
But it's a bit of a mindset shift, and a commitment from you to value people as people, and value the input they bring into their business, and value the fact that your business wouldn't be where it is and won't go to where it's going to go without them. Full fact. Your people in your business or ministry, they're the hands and feet. They're the ones that do the groundwork. They're the ones that are closer to the ground, to the customers, to the people that are coming, that you're serving in your ministry or whatever it may be. They're doing the work. And if you learn to understand that, value that, respect that, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think as Christians, that should definitely set us apart when it comes to like working in a team, leading others, like what you said, not seeing people as numbers, but seeing them as souls, as real people, as God's children, and treating them accordingly. And it's so true. Like in terms of leadership, there's a book that says that leaders eat last. I don't know if you've heard of it, which is basically like, it's just because you're a leader doesn't mean you're the first person that's going to eat. You need to be making sure everybody else is eating, then you can eat. So absolutely, it's about serving others. And Jesus was the greatest example of that, really. And when we first met, I remember you gave so many like biblical examples of teams and leadership and people working together in the Bible. I would love if you can kind of go into that and tell us maybe some of your favorite kind of biblical principles or biblical examples of teams.
Yeah, there are a lot of like examples of teams in the Bible. I mean, just the disciples themselves. So the 12, they were a team. They were doing a lot. Let's think of them when they were feeding the 5,000 men and with the loaves and the fish. Let's work as a team to do that. That would have been a massive task. If we practicalize that right now and think, like, if I'm being honest, 5 people is a lot of people. Like, if you're an introvert, that's like a lot of people, let alone 5,000 men, not including the women, the children. And there's 12 of them. It must have been so overwhelming. But they worked as a team to feed them all. That must have taken a lot of organization, a lot of structure. They've spent so much time around each other. They knew each other pretty well. We don't know the ins and outs of everything, but we can probably imagine that, okay, well, look, you're quite good at, like, you've got a big mouth. So you go over and then holler them and say, can you guys come over here and do that? Okay, and you're really good at serving. You're very kind and you're good at, serving. I think of myself, for example, I'm very good in the kitchen. When I go to anyone's house, my friends, I'm straight in the kitchen, I'm the server. When you're around people for long enough, you know what their strengths are. So I can imagine them playing to each other's strengths, not only to feed them, but also at the end, Bible talks about when they came and they collected the baskets, and they end up collecting 12 baskets of leftovers, perfect for each one of them to take something home. That's a great example of I guess, a team and doing things together. And when Jesus was telling them, sending them out to go and cast out demons and doing things, they were going out together, whether in 2s or 3s. And again, working as a team to do the thing that Jesus told them to do. And that's, I think, a great example. The disciples are a great example. Another one that I referred to when we met and I spoke at the talk that I gave, I spoke about Moses, Aaron and and when it's coming to defeat the Amalekites. And Moses couldn't do it by himself. He had to defeat them, he had to raise his hands. He got tired. If he didn't have one person holding one arm and one holding the other, and then working as a team to support him in that moment, then he wouldn't have defeated the Amalekites. And that is an example. A team hasn't got to necessarily be, ones that are together all the time. It could be a team for the moment to get that common thing done in that particular moment. It was Moses' father-in-law and his mentor, Jethro, said to him, you can't do all this by yourself. You need to delegate this and come on, raise up some people, find the people from the tribes, call them all up, and hand it over to them, and so that you get only the kind of like the high level stuff, but you need to hand it over, delegate. And that is an example of a team, because sometimes a team can be very close knit in terms of like the disciples working very closely together, or they can be a little bit separated in terms of they're a team by nature of their role. So like, guys, we're all, okay, I'm the leader of this tribe, I'm the leader of that tribe. and we all have a common goal in terms of how we're leading our tribes or our teams, for want of a better expression. We are a team in terms of being like middle managers. We're a team of leaders, and we kind of agree that how we want to lead people and what the end result is, but then we're left to our own devices as to how we get there with our own tribes and our own teams. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I would say, even like I said, the leaders that Moses put in place, they were a team in that kind of context. You've got Paul and his crew. I mean, Paul had a team of people, man. He was just sending them out, right, I'm going to send you Timothy, I'm going to send you this person, I'm sending him. Like, it's working together for a common goal. When, you can call upon one another, to support one another, to do something, to execute the vision, whatever that may be. There are some great examples in the Bible, and I think those are some ones that really stick out to me.
Yeah.
And Jesus himself was, you mentioned before, a great example of a leader, and how he managed and nurtured his team. He taught by example. Just follow me.
Yeah.
They watched him. They watched everything that he'd done. He was leading by example. He trained them up. He developed them. He gave them, he exhorted them. He edified them, even rebuked them sometimes. But it's all part of developing their character. And then he delegated and sent them out to do their own thing. Like, when there was, oh, Jesus, why is it we can't cast out all these people? He's like, must I do everything pretty much? Am I always going to be with you? Like, come on. You've been with me for a long period of time now. You must know something. I've taught you. Go and do it.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing, guys, for all the people that say, oh, the Bible don't say that. Paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But he gave us a good example of how to choose a team, how to lead a team, how to support a team, how to train a team, how to develop a team, how to delegate to your team. Great example.
Yeah. With teams, when you've kind of worked with teams and like helped to kind of develop teams, put them together and stuff like that, what you were saying before about there being like one common goal that you're working towards, how do you deal with conflicting voices, conflicting things that come up, and where people are almost not working towards a common goal? How do you deal with that?
I mean, it really varies, because it depends on the nature of the issue. Do you get what I mean? There's always going to be conflict. There's people and personalities. There's a clash. This is the thing about diversity. When we speak about diversity, everyone thinks of the traditional sense of, in terms of the kind of protected characteristics of your religious background and your gender and so on. I don't think of it necessarily like that. That is, of course, in place. I think about it into a different context completely, and I spoke about it for a number of years. And it's things like diversity in personality, diversity of thought, diversity even in agenda. Everyone has something that they want to get out of their role. They've all got different backgrounds and different ways of thinking. There's obviously now we've got a lot of neurodiversity and people that their brain works a bit differently. They think a bit differently. They approach things differently, maybe from a condition or something like that. So you're always going to have those different dynamics, and conflict's always going to come up. And I think it really is down to the leaders dealing with conflict as soon as it comes up. How you deal with it may vary, because it depends on what the situation is, but dealing with it and not allowing it to fester, allowing people a space to have their say. And I would say this as well, one of the things that I've seen is knowing what the hard line is, because there's a level of flexibility and compromise. Sometimes the conflict comes because someone don't like what you are saying and where we're going. There does come a point when it's kind of like, okay, I get that, but we're doing it because this is what the business needs at the end of the day. People want to have autonomy, but autonomy happens to an extent and within a structure. If someone wants that much autonomy and is not very good at taking instruction and being in a box, it should go and run their own business. It gets to that point. We're not trying to pander to every tiny thing, but it's when a conflict arises, it's dealing with it ASAP, and that comes from just conversation. Let's have an informal chat. Let's get to the root of the problem. How can we support? How can we help? It could be a lack of understanding. It could be a personality clash. It's about dealing with it. And I used to train and teach on a course called Courageous Conversations, and taught managers how to have these conversations, because there've got to be some not so nice conversations. They're not all going to end up in roses, Skittles, Zaflora, lovely smelling stuff. It may not necessarily end up the way you want it to end up in terms of the employee being fully happy, but you as a leader have to understand that you're not going to make everyone happy. And when it comes to it, particularly it comes to the mission, the vision, the plan, ministry, business, ultimately there is a hard line. And we will do what we can do to support. We want people to buy in, but we recognise not everyone will buy in despite all your efforts. It's not a perfect formula. And, it gets to a point where you may have to say to people, this is what it is. Are you in? Are you out? you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think leadership is being strong. Even if you're going for, like I mentioned, the humanity-led leadership and servant leadership, all that stuff is all lovely and it works. But the practicality is, this is where we're going. We want you to come on board. And we almost have to have, this sounds a bit harsh because I've spoken so lovely about all the things we can do, but also we get tough when we need to get tough. It's having a zero tolerance for someone that's anti. If there's someone that's deliberately being anti, we've got to deal with that.
Yeah. And we see that in the word as well.
You've got to deal with it because you've got to root it. It's like a cancer. You've got to root it out because nothing worse when someone's in a team and they're doing the absolute most in the opposite direction and you're not doing anything about it. It actually makes the problem bigger because other people in the team will start to see that you're not doing anything about this particular issue. That then causes them to lose respect for you. They start acting up and doing the work, doing the most. This person thinks they can get away with murder because no one's ever addressing them with it, and it ends up becoming a cancer. Once you start to lose respect in your team and people don't think you'll deal with things and it becomes like almost like mini anarchy. Once you lost control, it's very hard to get it back. So when you've got an issue, you've got a problem with somebody, you've got to address it, you've got to deal with it. And that's part and parcel of being a leader. And not everyone wants to do that. I think it's funny. It's the same thing when it comes to Jesus and how people think of him. My pastor always says, everyone thinks of Jesus like this guy in a white nightie. They're forgetting his tongue was like, oh, when he needed to be. It will call you your bag of hypocrites and vipers, flipping over tables. Okay, I'm not saying anyone should do that. Please, no one go and do that in their ministries or anything like that. But it just stands to the point of you can be a leader and you can serve and you can nurture and you can grow. But when you've got to take a hard line take a stance, should I say, for the hard line, you've got to be willing to do that.
Yeah, that
comes of it. And so it's when it comes to building a team, this is why I go back to what I mentioned before. And when people say to me, I want to build a team, I'm like, why? And are you ready? And my one-on-one kind of mentoring and coaching is to help them to develop and to grow. And even when they have got a team, helping them still whilst they've got these issues, got these, I guess, struggles with their team and supporting them through solutions and what's happened today. And let's talk through it. How can we do it better? How can you manage that? Because it's about developing them as leaders as well, to manage people. Because people, I say it quite a lot, people are people.
Yeah.
They're hard work.
Yeah.
They're very hard work.
Yeah. So when it comes to choosing a team, what's the one thing that you would then look out for where it's like, no, that kind of quality cannot be in a team? Again,
it depends on the kind of team you're building. It depends on your culture. There isn't a set formula. There's no set formula that I would say. Yes, there's a way, you can assess people and ask certain questions and whatever, but everything comes off the back of you knowing what your business stands for, what you're trying to achieve, what you're doing the homework beforehand, knowing what you need, what roles you need, what kind of qualities you need, creating assessments to be able to try and assess those qualities in people through the kind of recruitment or onboarding process. And that's all very much individual. It's very much individual to every business, to every ministry. It comes back down to that. You create a benchmark in which you're assessing people against. So there isn't, I wouldn't say like a one particular thing or a one size fits all. It's you have to create, what is the size in your business and how are you going to assess this person can fit into that?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's for you to set those parameters and you to set those boundaries. You know what you're going to accept and what you won't. Every company is different. Of course, there's more general stuff that people are not going to accept anywhere, absenteeism, lateness, rudeness, the standard. But then there could be something that's very important to you as a business because of the nature of your business, the nature of what you're trying to do, that may not be as important to another organisation. So you have to set the parameters for yourself and what's important to you, and then you assess people and manage people in accordance with that. So if you are a very collaborative culture, very supportive, you spend a lot of time together, very social, and you've got someone that's completely anti, well, that quality is not going to really work. They're very much not into team working. Their whole entire career has been based around working by themselves, autonomously, haven't been in a team for like 20 years. You're knowing from the very beginning that you're taking a risk in trying to integrate them. You may think, actually, that's not the right, it's not really going to work out. We need someone that really can hit the ground running, very much into teams. Sometimes the positions are so urgent, we haven't got time to always train everyone up into something. There are times you need someone to come in and hit the ground running in certain aspects. And sometimes we can train them in this and this and this, but we need them to have 1, 2, and 3. That has to be standard. We ain't got time to train that.
Yeah.
And so, we've got to find someone that has 1, 2, and 3. If they haven't got it, then they're not for us.
Yeah.
So you set that parameter yourself.
Yeah. Okay. And in your time in kind of like your HR kind of professional life and what you do now with your mentoring, coaching, helping people build teams, what are some of the lessons that you've learned? Obviously, I keep hearing you say this phrase of people will be people. Have you got any examples of where kind of that kind of became a thing where you were like, oh my gosh, like I've learned something from this experience?
Do you know what? In everything, in my career, personal life, you learn. I say a lot, yeah, people are people, because I think it's good to remind us of that. I think people set too much expectation on other people and hold them to a standard that respectfully they don't hold themselves, and hold them to too high of a standard and don't allow people to be people. It's not easy working alongside anybody, being alongside anybody. It's not easy because you've all got your own ideals and your own way of thinking, a way of doing things, and you're trying to find a common ground.
Yeah.
And so it's never going to be easy. And I think I mentioned people in quite a lot because it's a reminder that we're all human.
Yeah.
We're people. Let's make some allowances. And I've been reminded of that over my career, just in HR, in corporate land, and just how people have responded to me, how they have reacted to certain things, how in many instances have been not very nice. I mean, I came out in a corporate background, and calling a spade, you know, I was probably a younger one against me. I was doing HR. Some people do not care about HR. Second thing, I was a black woman. Third thing, I was a woman, black and I was a woman. So I had all these things against me in corporate. When I've been in places where I'm in a head office of like 50 odd people, I'm the only person who looks like me in the entire office.
Wow.
When I was working up in the north of England, and I'm going into boardrooms with 20, you know, like white men, I'm the only woman in the room. And if I wasn't the only woman, I was one of two women, I was the only black woman in the room from down south as well. I mean, it all was going against me all the time. And so in those situations, I experienced a lot of things, a lot of kind of the prejudices and a lot of the kind of, you know, people looking down, and their culture is, you know, in a particular place, their culture was very, very autocratic, very all boys club, lived up to the stereotype, very much cursing and swearing and all these kind of things, and not very respectful. And so they never respected me as a person. But what you are going to respect is my knowledge, my experience, and my qualification. You don't know more about this thing than me, just like I don't know more about operations than you. I know a little bit about it, but I can't sit here and toe-to-toe with you about your expert area.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I would say that really helped me was just to have the confidence. Well, like I said, I'm quite a confident person generally, but having the confidence in my experience and my knowledge. Because you may not respect me as a person, but we're in a situation where you do need me. We all know this. You can flip tables, curse, swear, do whatever you want to do. We all know that you need me to support in this particular thing. You can't do it without having my expertise. And me knowing that, you knowing that, me standing on that, and me standing on my knowledge and not backing down to it. Someone can, you know, had experiences when people have argued me down. And, you know, you get to a point... Okay, example, I mentioned earlier on about my experience and getting to where I was. And when I decided to walk out, that was a meeting I was in with somebody that every time, as a regional director, every time I'm in this meeting, he wanted to argue me down. I can think of a number of reasons why, probably obvious ones. Every time, and one day I had enough. I thought, I've had enough of this, because actually I know what I'm talking about. You don't want to listen. Why am I beating this drum unnecessarily? It's I don't need to do it anymore. Someone was mid-meeting, and he just spoke to me in a way I didn't like once too often. And when his back was turned, he was looking at the screen, doing some stuff. I was just like packing my stuff up, getting ready. And he's like, oh, where are you going? I'm leaving. And he was like, you can't leave. Watch me.
Yeah.
And I was out. And, you know, it's, I guess a lesson that came from that was back to the thing that you mentioned that I stand on. Is not. I'm not compromising for nobody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I compromise to an extent. Like you, because people are people. You have to make allowances and allow for grace. And people have a bad day, and they can be a bit ratty, and sometimes they're not very nice to you. I accept it. I expect it. But then everyone has a limit, and so with that, for me, there was a limit for me, and I was like, no, no, yeah, no,
yeah,
bye.
Yeah, I guess it's clear, like what we were talking about before, where you should leave a team having been built up and become better. So when you realise that actually being in this team is draining me,
It's
know when to cut loose.
Exactly. And the thing about it is, though, is it's funny because even when you mention that, and I think of that example, it's knowing what team I'm in. So ultimately, I'm in my HR team. I'll call my girls and they're backing me up because they have to deal with managers too.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're in a big team. We've got one common goal. I'm assigned to your company. I had 6 companies I looked after in a group. We're all the directors, separate legal entities. So me and my team, as in my administrators and stuff, we're supporting you. And we're your team. We're it. So we're in that kind of team. But then it's funny because I look back now and what you just said and thinking, I didn't really class them as my team.
Right.
My team, with my other HR managers and business partners, it was them. It was my group director. Because we can get together and say, listen, this is what happened. And we can we sound off each other and say, I've had that experience too. Don't worry about it, Sonia, or don't worry about it, so-and-so. We support each other. So for me, it was like working. I wasn't happy in dealing with that particular person in operations any longer. But I didn't look at him as my team member. I looked at my team as my team.
Yeah.
But then that comes to a point when you're like, okay, I'm still even team. I love you, but I'm going now.
Yeah. But it was like you were saying before, like it's different levels of teams. So obviously that was your core team, but because you're still working with them.
Yes,
like
exactly. Different levels. Yeah. And it's I guess just the importance you place. And the fact of the matter is you can't go into somewhere and even for, going in a team or being a leader, let's just go in there with a level of reality. It's not going to be perfect every single time.
Yeah.
Everyone has bad days. Everyone has, snappy moments, and it's part and parcel of the working environment. You have to have a level of resilience. You cannot be a petulant child that wants to throw your toys out the pram whenever it doesn't go your way. As a leader or as a team member. This is real life. And there's going to be some good days and bad days. Days your leader wants you to do something and you don't want to do it, but you've got to do it anyway. Yeah. Days as a leader, your team are not playing ball at all. No matter how much you've cast the vision and made it plain, they're not running. They're just looking at you like Alice in Wonderland, like, You're like, guys, come on, I've told you. That is part and parcel. There has to be, and it's part of your character development, there has to be a level of resilience and perseverance. The Bible talks about that, about having perseverance and all these different things, and it kind of builds character. It talks about that. We have to accept that we are dealing with people. Nothing is perfect. We're in an imperfect world. And we can do our best efforts, but our best efforts will not always result in the outcome that we want. And that's a very fine line for Christians to toe. When we start getting to a place of trying to manipulate an outcome, we're borderline in getting into witchcraft. We don't be doing that stuff because manipulation is not of the Lord. Yeah. And it's kind of like allowing people to be people, doing the best that you can do. If it's not quite working out, then being confident enough to take the steps you need to take to try and rectify it in whatever way you can.
Yeah. Okay, so final words. I want you to talk to the person on the other side of the camera or listening to this podcast, and they, like you say, maybe are at a point where everything is bottlenecking, in terms of what they need to do and things like that. I'd like you to just give them some advice, just a few sentences of how they can then begin to build their team and delegate and work with other people. So you can look at the camera for this one.
Okay, I'll look at the camera. So my advice to you, firstly, is to recognise that you cannot do it all by yourself, and you were never designed to do it by yourself. This thing that you're building out here is something that God has called you to do, and he didn't call you to do it by yourself. So there comes a point when you need to start thinking about having people on board to support the vision and to help you to execute. You are one person. You're the visionary, you're the builder, you're even the architect, but you need people. The architect doesn't build the building himself. He hires people to come in and starts building the building for him. The visionary doesn't do everything themselves. They have people that come on the ground and do the work for them. So if you're at a place when you realise that actually, I'm not so good at doing this anymore, or things are bottlenecking, the first thing you start thinking about is, what help do I need? What things do I not like to do, or what am I not very good at? Where are the pinch points? What's causing me to not get things done? What is taking up most of my time? Start thinking about that, mapping out the tasks, the activities, and starting to create a role, and start thinking about what kind of person you'd want to be in that role, and start to find that person. Make a conscious effort to go out and say, right, let me go and find this person. I want to do it properly. Let me get the help that I need. And I will say this, one thing that is very important when it comes to teams, I'm speaking specifically in regards to business, is that teams is not a frilly area of business. It's an area of business that's governed by law. So it's not something you should just try to pull together yourself and try to figure out for yourself, because you can get yourself into a lot of hot water. And this business dream that you've got, and this vision that you've got, is a very important one to you. You don't want to do anything that's going to sabotage that or get you into problems. So go and get the help you need. And that requires a whole mindset shift. The shift that says that you don't know it all, that you are going to need help, and there are experts out there that can help you and support you in terms of a mentor or someone that's qualified in HR to guide you along the way. When it comes to the point of you saying, I want to find that person, they can help you with recruitment, helping you to stay in on the right side of the law, and help you to bring people on board so that you can start to grow your business. The biggest thing I would say to you is to understand that it's going to be a learning curve for you. It's not going to be the easiest thing for you. It may be hard for you to let go, but you're going to need to let go if you're wanting this thing to grow and expand, because the vision and what God is doing with you, in you, and through you and your business stroke ministry is bigger than you. And you need people to come alongside to execute. If Jesus had people to come alongside him to execute, who are we to say that we don't need people to come alongside? And that's my biggest bit of advice to you.
Amen. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And thank you for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. We could talk here forever, but yeah, we've got time, I know.
Yes. And so that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment.